Okay, brilliant. Well, welcome very much to our latest labour market quarterly webinar, where Mike and Hannah from the policy department are going to run through this quarter's statistics and do a little bit of a kind of brief overview of the report they've pulled together. But the full report will be accessible on our website, and then we'll go over to Andrea at the CPCA, who's also going to give an update, and then at the end we'll take questions on all of the content. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Mike and Hannah to kick off with the report.
Great. Well, hi everybody. Great to have you on the call today. There'll be some new faces amongst you and also some veterans of this workshop. So for the benefit of the newcomers to this, I'm just going to run through a little bit about the background to this report and to this workshop. So this workshop presents the findings of a longer report that we complete every quarter. And it's really a detailed dive into the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough labour market. And we do it to support the strategy work around labour market policy within this part of the world. So we've supported the local skills improvement plan, which is the main sort of skills plan for this part of the world, and more recently as well, underpinning the evidence base for the local Get Britain working plan development, which Andrea from the Combined Authority will talk about later in the workshop. So the evidence base covers both of those plans, and that's put together in a report. And what you'll see today is some of the highlights from it. It's a really quite long report in total, so we've had to kind of pick out some of the highlights. This is quite a large deck of slides, and all of them will be made available after this workshop. But in the time we've got today, we're just going to pick on some of the charts, and then in the Q&A, if you spot anything as we skip through that you'd like us to pick up in more detail, we can do that. We can go back and pick it up in the Q&A. Or, of course, you can use the numbers in this for your own work. That's what we hope you'll be able to do. So feel free, by the way, to use any of the content from this in any of your own analytical work. That would be great to see that. So without any further ado, we're going to start with some of the key messages from our latest report, our quarterly report. And here are some of the sort of headline messages, I guess. The first is something about the overall business conditions that we see that form the context for employers. So we capture this in the quarterly economic survey that the Chamber of Commerce puts together every quarter, and we see it in some of the other economic statistics we pick up too. But what we see in the second quarter of this year is business conditions have remained challenging for employers in this part of the world. And the latest QES shows some numbers going in the wrong direction, really, for sales bookings and export sales. And we see almost 2/3 of the businesses responding to that survey now operating below capacity. And those who respond to the survey cite weak demand, global uncertainty, of course, well documented in the media, some of the higher taxes that have come through or are in train, and low confidence. And so those are some of the key things that we're getting. We also see now that labour costs are seen by business as the dominant price pressure. So we ask businesses about what some of the things driving their costs. And 90% of businesses responding to the QES reported upward pressure on prices from labour costs, driven by things like policy changes, like national insurance and national living wage changes, but also heightened concerns around taxation and inflation. So that's the economic context. When we look at the labour market within that, what we see is a bit of a mixed picture. So job postings, that's the number of jobs that are advertised and that we capture, has increased for the first time in 2 years, but it still remains below long-term averages. We also see that recruitment difficulties are now at their lowest level in a number of years. And the posting duration, so this is how long on average job posts are active, that too has dropped. So that's a sign of what's happening in the labour market. However, we still see tight labour market conditions in some parts of the labour market. So shortages remain acute for health and care workers, for example, engineers and some construction trades. And local businesses continue to report gaps in certain areas like manual technical jobs, engineering skills, and so on. If we look at labour market participation, again, sort of mixed signals. The employment rate for our part of the world edged up slightly in the year to March of 2025, but economic inactivity, those people who are not participating in the labour market, that is, in work or looking for a job, that has risen to a 4-year high of close to 20%, but that's mainly due to student numbers, less so than sickness, and also people looking after family or retiring early. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. We've got a detailed table of all of that to show you. Also, if we look at the 80% employment rate target, so this is the target that the government has set across the country and was set out in its white paper. We'll show you an analysis of that and how that breaks down in our part of the world. But the headline of that is that in order for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to meet that 80% employment target, and remember it's at 78.1% at the moment, you would need another 10,360 people in work across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And the headline is, basically, we think that is realistic. It's achievable if you look at the region as a whole. But if you look at localities within the region, then it starts to, you have different challenges in different areas. For some parts of the region, it's to do with how much demand there is in the economy. In other parts, it's to do with the demography of a place, particularly student numbers in certain places. So more on that in a bit. Employer investment in training is also low. We've seen that as a bit of a perennial, unfortunately, in these workshops. But we have some new numbers from the National Employers Skills Survey to share with you later in the presentation. But I'll move things on. And what I'm going to do is just give you some of the key messages from the sections of the report. And then my colleague Hannah is going to take you through some of the detailed slides, the charts and the numbers. So some of the key messages. So if we look at employment, so as I said, it's increased slightly in the year to March up to 78.1%. And those employment gains were concentrated among 25 to 49-year-olds and also in public services. But employment fell for young people, so 16 to 24-year-olds, and in sectors such as retail, hospitality, manufacturing. Economic inactivity, so those not participating in the labour market, that also rose for the second consecutive year, and that's now at a 4-year high of close to 20%. And that's mainly driven by record numbers of students. So we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but of course, economic inactivity can change for reasons that are economically advantageous and also economically disadvantageous. And so it's a number that takes some careful consideration. But yes, we have seen an increase in student numbers and an impact on that, on economic inactivity. Local trends are mixed. So South Cambridge's employment rate reached a record high, but Cambridge, that's Cambridge City's employment rate, is now at its lowest in 13 years. And the employment rate for people with disability or a work limiting illness improved over the last year, but it still remains well below that for non-disabled people. So I'm just going to move on now to the charts. So Hannah, oh, sorry, I've got one more slide to go before I hand over to Hannah. So a little bit more on the 80% employment target. So this is something that was set out in the government's Get Britain Working white paper, and it's an anchor for government policy around the labour market. So if we look at our part of the world, in order to achieve that, So we would need an additional 10,360 people to find or be supported into work. But there are currently 29,200 people currently unemployed or inactive, but wanting a job in the region. So on the basis of those numbers, you'd have to say that in aggregate, it looks reasonable and possible to achieve that 80% target across the region as a whole. But achieving it in each locality or each district of the region would be more challenging. So, for example, in Cambridge, achieving a full employment would be really challenging just to the number of students who are in the area and economically inactive. It's probably not realistic, and that's going to change massively in the medium term, and it may not be economically advantageous in the long run for that to happen. So we need to be mindful of how demography plays out in different parts of the region. But in Fenland and Peterborough, for instance, the lack of sufficient local job opportunities could be the main challenge there. So as we go into the charts, Hannah, tell me when to stop.
We can go to slide 10. I'll go through this one. So as Mike mentioned, we've included more data in our quarterly report this time to support the development of the local Get Britain Working Plan. So this table shows the number and percentage of 16 to 64-year-olds who are not in employment, education or training. So that's those who are unemployed, so out of work but actively seeking work, and those who are inactive for reasons other than being a student. So that's those who are out of work and not actively seeking work for reasons such as poor health, caring responsibilities or early retirement. So in the year to March 2025, just over 81,000 16 to 64-year-olds across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough weren't in employment, educational training. And that's equivalent to 15.3%, so more than 1 in 7 people, but that was below the national average of 18.6%. And if we look at numbers at local authority level, the largest cohorts of workless people in the region are in the north of the region, so in Peterborough, Huntingdonshire and Fenland. And these account for almost 3/4 of all workless people across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And if we look at rates of worklessness, these were above the national average in Fenland, where almost 1/4 of 16 to 64-year-olds were not in employment, education or training, and in Peterborough, where more than 1/5 were not in employment or education. And if we can move on to slide 12. So this shows a bit more detail on what Mike has just been talking about, so full employment requirements in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So the Get Britain Working white paper sets out the government's ambition to achieve an 80% employment rate. So in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we had an employment rate of 78.1% in the year to March 2025. And to achieve an 80% employment rate would require just over 10,000 people to find or be supported into work. And it looks like this could be theoretically achievable, as over the same period, 29,200 were out of work but wanted a job. So that's almost 3 times the number needed to achieve 80% employment. And in the first half of this year, there were almost 11,000 job postings per month. So assuming a good fit between those wanting to work and the job opportunities available, and no significant barriers to employment for those wanting to work, it would be possible to achieve 80% employment across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Now, you wouldn't need to achieve 80% in all local authority areas to achieve 80% across the area as a whole, as some areas have employment rates already exceeding 80%, so that's South Cambridgeshire, East Cambridgeshire and Huntingdonshire. However, if there was an ambition to achieve 80% employment in all areas of the region, we'd need to support over 7,000 people into work in Cambridge, over 6,000 in Peterborough and over 5,500 people in Fenland. Now in Fenland and Peterborough, the number of people out of work and wanting to work exceeds the number required to achieve full employment. But in Fenland in particular, a lack of demand or lack of job opportunities is likely to be a major barrier to increasing the employment rate. So there were just 600 job postings per month within Fenland itself over the last 6 months. And there's also a low percentage of people living within easy access to a major employment centre. So that also makes it difficult to try and increase employment through commuting to other areas which have more job opportunities. And in Cambridge, we have a different situation. So you'd need to support over 7,000 people into work to achieve 80% employment. But we only have less than 2,000 people who are out of work but want to work. And this is likely due to the high number of people in Cambridge that are inactive due to being a student. And so achieving 80% employment in Cambridge is likely to be unachievable and even undesirable, as it would require reducing the student population. And of course, being a student has benefits in the longer term of creating higher quality employment.
Thanks, Hannah. So if we turn to local jobs markets, so what we see is the number of businesses in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough have declined for the second consecutive year, if we take it from 2024, with the biggest falls in transportation and storage, so net loss of 360 businesses, and information and communication, which is a net loss of 180 businesses. If we look at jobs postings, they increased by 3% in the 6 months to July of this year, which is the first rise in 2 years, but it's still below the long-term average, and it's slightly below the pre-pandemic levels. So Cambridge was the only area to see a decline over the last half years. That was a decline of a decline of 9% over the 6-month period, and close to a third year on year. Demand for science, engineering, technology professionals rebounded, especially for mechanical engineers, but postings for programmers and software developers in Cambridge continued to fall. And we've got a few more slides on that later on in the presentation where we'll be unpacking that a little bit. But so just hold that in your mind for now. But the NHS remains the region's top recruiter, and it accounts for 4% of all postings across the region, followed by the University of Cambridge and the technical arm. So on to you, on to me rather. So if we're going to do a little bit of a focus this time on job quality and insecure work. So this is part of the expanded evidence base for the local Get Britain working plan that Andrea will pick up towards the end of the presentation. So we've got some additional content this time on that and in the report itself. But here are some highlights that Hannah's going to talk to in a second. But 1 in 6 of the region's employees worked unsatisfactory hours in 2023, and satisfactory being fewer than 48 hours, but not looking for more hours, with higher rates for men, older workers, and those in manufacturing. 1 in 7 employees work unpaid overtime, higher rates for men, highly qualified workers, and those in information. A number of other points on the slide there, but we'll pick up the actual numbers in a second. So if I flip forward and we'll just move you on to the charts. So Hannah, you're going to go through some of the numbers that we picked up for this.
Yeah, that's right. So again, we've to support the local Get Britain working plan, we've included some more evidence on job quality this time, and this uses a set of indicators produced by the Office for National Statistics. So these show that in 2023, 16.4% of workers in the area worked unsatisfactory hours. So again, this is people working more than 48 hours a week, or not looking for as many hours as, or not working as many hours as I'd like. So that's equivalent to almost 1 in 6 employees. And if we look at across different types of workers, working unsatisfactory hours is most common among process, plant and machine operatives at 42%. And this correlates with the manufacturing sector having the highest rate of people working unsatisfactory hours. And it's also more common for males and females, more common among older age groups, and more common among disabled and non-disabled workers. And 15.2% of workers also worked unpaid overtime, so that's more than 1 in 7. And if we look across different types of workers again, working unpaid overtime is most common in the information and communication sector at 35%. It's also more common among those with high-level qualifications and those working in senior positions, more common for males and females, much more common for full-time than part-time workers, and more common for disabled than non-disabled workers. Instance of working on undesired contracts is very low. So just 1.2% of workers didn't have their desired contract, and just 1.7% had a 0 hours contract. We don't have many breakdowns for these indicators because the percentages are quite low overall. Now, one of the starkest indicators of job quality is around career progression. So more than 40%, so that's more than 2 in 5 workers, claim to have no opportunities for career progression. And looking across different types of workers, poor progression opportunities are most common for disabled workers at 61%, and also for older workers. At sector level, retail and manufacturing workers have the poorest progression opportunities, while at occupational level, career progression is poorest for associate professional and caring, leisure and other service occupations. And part-time workers are also more likely than full-time workers to lack progression opportunities. Poor involvement in decision-making is also prevalent across the workforce. So when asked how poor or good their managers were at involving their employees in decision-making, almost 45% reported poor involvement. And the cohort most likely to report poor involvement were 25 to 44-year-olds, over 70%. And at industry level, those working in the manufacturing and in public sector service sectors. And again, disabled employees are more likely to report poor involvement than non-disabled workers. And finally, when it comes to low pay, that's classed as earning below 2/3 of the UK's average hourly pay. 12.1%, or almost 1 in 8 employees, were in low paid jobs. And low pay was most common among those with no qualifications at almost 40%. And at occupation and industry level, among those in sales and customer service occupations and in the retail sector. And again, workers were more likely to be on low pay if they were disabled, or if they were female, or if they worked part-time. And at local level, official earnings data also shows that low pay in 2024 was most prevalent among those with jobs located in Fenland, East Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
So moving on to skills gaps, shortages. So the headline here is that recruitment challenges have eased to a 6-year low, and that manual, technical, health and care roles remain the hardest ones to fill. So we look at the jobs posting data around this, and they suggest that recruitment difficulties have eased. The average time taken to fill a vacancy has dropped to 20 days. So that's in the 6 months to July 2025 from 27 days over the preceding 6 months. So that's quite a big change in the labour market. And based on posting duration, if we use that as a proxy for how difficult it is to recruit certain occupations, then recruitment difficulties were highest for health and care workers, production supervisors and operatives, engineers, construction, and a number of other trades. We also have this time the results of the 2024 National Employers Skills Survey. So this is quite a detailed survey that's taken out at a national level. It's only conducted every couple of years. So I think Hannah, this might be the first time we've used it in an updated version in this piece of work, in this reporting. And what that points to is recruitment difficulties easing considerably between 2022, which was the preceding survey, and 2024, when the most recent one was conducted. And almost 1/3 of vacancies being hard to fill. So that's below the England average, and less than half the rate it was in the last survey in 2022. We see a reduction in recruitment difficulties, but this is also reflected in a drop in recruitment activities. So the vacancy rate being at its lowest since 2013. So local evidence suggests that recruitment difficulties are currently highest for manual technical workers, engineers and IT professionals. So Hannah, if you're going to take us through some of the numbers here. So I think, was that the one? Yeah.
That's the one, yep. So, as Mike mentioned, the long-awaited employer skills survey for 2024 has recently been released, and this provides us with some information on recent trends in employer skills gaps and shortages. So in line with the rest of our labour market evidence, the survey showed a drop in recruitment activity between 2022 and 2024, with the vacancy rate, that's the number of vacancies as a percentage of employment, falling to its lowest level since 2013. And with this drop in recruitment activity came a drop in recruitment difficulty. So on this chart, that's the turquoise line that we're looking at. So the survey showed that 30% of vacancies were hard to fill in 2024, and that's less than half the rate in 2022, when 65% were hard to fill post-pandemic. And this was the lowest rate since the earliest period of data. And across occupations, the national survey suggested that recruitment difficulties were highest for health and social care associate professionals, elementary trades and skilled trades, and at sector level in the construction sector. And this drop in recruitment difficulties is also supported by job postings data, and this gives us information on how long vacancies are taking to fill. So median posting duration has recently fallen to its lowest level for 6 years, so it's now back down to its pre-pandemic level. And when it comes to skills gaps, the survey suggests that these have also fallen. So looking at the purple line here, the percentage of employers with at least one employee who isn't fully proficient, this fell to 11% in 2024. And looking at the orange line, the percentage of all workers with skills gaps fell to 3.1%. And you can see that both of these indicators fell to their lowest levels since the earliest period of data. And again, we don't have local data on occupation or industry level skills gaps for 2024, but the national data tells us that skills gaps reduced in most sectors, particularly in information and communication, and skills gaps were highest in consumer services, so hotels and restaurants and the retail sector.
So on to education and training, and the key message, the headline message is that education and training participation among 16 to 17-year-olds has fallen to a 6-year low, with rising rates of people who are not in education, employment or training, and big disparities in access to further education. So we picked up some of that earlier on in the presentation, and maybe we can pick up that a little bit more in the Q&A, but just some other headlines here. So participation in education and training, it fell to 91.6% in 2025 for 16 to 17-year-olds, and that's the lowest since 2019, and slightly below the English average, which is just a bit higher at 92%. And the decline was driven by a drop in apprenticeship participation. This is down to 3.5%, while full-time and part-time education rates remained stable. So the percentage of 16 to 17-year-olds known to be NEET rose for the third consecutive year to nearly 4%, which is the highest since 2016, and it's also above the national average of 3.4%. The NEET rate in Peterborough at 5.4% is significantly higher than in Cambridgeshire, and has increased more sharply as well than the national average. FE access, Hannah has already spoken to that, but employer training has fallen to a new record low. Employer skills survey showing 60% of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough establishments providing training to their employees in 2024 at the lowest level since 2013, which is the earliest year that we have data from that survey. And off-the-job training declined more sharply than on-the-job training, as employers have become less willing to take their employees out of work for training activities. Across the region as a whole, so that is the wider region of the east of England, employers spent an average of close to £3,000 on training per employee, which is the second lowest rate of training expenditure since 2013, but also significantly higher than the national average. So we're going to do a quick focus on T-levels, and actually this fell out of one of the requests from the previous workshop. So we've spent some time in pulling this report together, looking at T-levels specifically and some of the challenges and opportunities around work placements specifically. And so within the report, we've got some case studies that are really interesting to look at, and some of the lessons that have been learned from those FE institutions who are doing T-levels and some of the things that they've learned. So it's really, from a provider perspective, I hope there's some really useful stuff in there. But some headline rates on this. So between 2021-22 and 2024-25, so those academic years, there were over 2,000 T-level students in the East of England region as a whole, and they represent 8.6% of all T-level students across England. So that's lower than the region's share of England's young population, so 16 to 19-year-olds, which was 10.5% in 2024. Of the 18 subject areas then available, education and early years had the largest share of T-level students in the region, followed by health and design, and surveying and planning. From September 2025, 5 providers across Cambridge and Peterborough will be offering T-levels. It's Cambridge Academy of Science and Technology, Cambridge Regional College, the College of West Anglia, Greater Peterborough UTC, and Inspire Education Group. And within the report, there's some details about how that breaks down by course, and some a bit more details about T-levels across the region. But we've drawn some case studies from a national report which map back to student experiences within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So within the report itself, we look at 2. So one for drawn from Cambridge Academy for Science and Technology. So this was a work placement at the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge. So we look at the benefits to employers from that work placement, and some interesting points there about gaining access to promising future scientists, and also her performance, the student in question. Her performance led to a degree apprenticeship offer. So really interesting stuff. And also some of the lessons from that are included in the report. So do look at that. And we also include another case study from a cast as well, this time the placement at the University of Cambridge, Department of Engineering. And again, lessons for providers, lessons for employers included in the report. So just some highlights here, but some much more detail in the main report itself. Hannah, you're going to pick us up, I think, with this table here. Is that right?
No, if we can go to slide 39, sorry. This is the one, so back one.
Yeah, that's it.
No, sorry, the one on FE for 16 to 19-year-olds. That's just the one before that. That's the one.
Yeah.
Right. So we've included some data in this quarter's report on access to further education for 16 to 19-year-olds from the Department for Transport's Journey Time statistics. So this shows that distance to an FE provider is likely to be a barrier to young people's education and training participation in rural areas. So if we look firstly at the purple bars, so across England, an average of 85% of 16 to 19-year-olds live within a 30-minute walk or public transport journey to an FE provider. Now, within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, access to an FE provider is above average in Cambridge at 99% of 16 to 19-year-olds, and Peterborough at 95%, but it's below average in the rural local authority areas, particularly in South Cambridgeshire and East Cambridgeshire. So here only 1/3, so 33 and 34% of young people live within a 30-minute walk or public transport journey to an FE provider. And that makes them the 13th and 14th most deprived in terms of FE access of over 300 local authority areas in England. And you can also see, looking at the orange bars now, that the percentage of young people living within a 30-minute journey to an FE provider by car is also very low in East Cambridgeshire at 66% of 16 to 19-year-olds, compared to 99% nationally. And Andrea is going to talk a bit more in a bit about improving access to FE in cold spots such as East Cambridgeshire and in St Neots. And if we can go on to the next slide. So we've got some data here again from the National Employer Skills Survey, this time on employer training. So the latest survey shows that employer training reduced to a new record low in 2024, with 60% of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough employers providing training to their employees. And that's the lowest rate since the earliest year of data. So you can see from this chart that the percentage of employers providing on-the-job and off-the-job training both fell to record low levels. And that's particularly the case for off-the-job training. So that's the turquoise bars. So in 2013, the earliest year of data, off-the-job training was slightly more popular than on-the-job training at 57% compared to 56% of employers. But engagement in off-the-job training has since fallen more sharply and is now much less prevalent than on-the-job training at 34% compared to 49% of employers. So this indicates that employers are now significantly less willing to take their employees out of their day-to-day work activities for training purposes.
So moving on to digital skills and occupations. So this is a focus of the local skills improvement plan. So within each report, we like to do a kind of a focus on this, and also green skills and jobs, which we'll be talking about in a minute. But aside from being the one of the focuses of the current local skills improvement, it's also a focus of some really interesting developments within the labour market, particularly around the impact of artificial intelligence on labour demand, and also the kind of skills that recruiters are looking for. So we do have within the report a kind of focus on AI and basically what we know at the current state of the literature on understanding what sort of effects these are having, or what other researchers are seeing across the world as well. This is something that labour market researchers everywhere are trying to sort of understand in some detail. But here are some of the kind of headline takeaways really about digital occupations. So we know that recruitment to digital occupations remains subdued, although there is still strong demand for core and specialised digital skills. That's the kind of the really high level message. But 1 in 11 workers in the region are employed in what you might call digital occupations, and that's higher than the national average of 1 in 15. The technology company Arm, the University of Cambridge, and the NHS are the biggest recruiters of digital workers, and digital employment rates are highest in Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire, and lowest in Fenland and Huntingdonshire. Digital skills are essential entry requirements for more than 4/5 of all job openings. And the most requested specialised digital skills over the past 5 years include things like the coding language Python, software engineering, data analysis, computer science, and common digital skills that are frequently requested in job posts include Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Office more generally, and computer literacy more generally than that, and some other Microsoft packages. Recruitment for digital occupations, though, is at a near record low, with job postings for digital occupations increasing by just less than 6% in the 6 months to July 2025, but still at the second lowest level since the earliest period that we have data for. The number of job postings for digital occupations was 57.1% lower than the long-term average. So some quite big numbers there, really. In terms of the focus on AI that I mentioned about just opening there, again, this is also in response to some of the feedback we've had in previous workshops and previous chamber membership events, where a kind of desire for us to look in a bit more detail to understand how this is playing out. So, as I said, we've tried to understand the literature as best we can, and also use what information we do have to get a sense of this. But what we see is that there is still considerable uncertainty around the impact of AI on the job market. So job search sites, so these are those online platforms for recruitment, have warned of a drop in entry-level jobs since the launch of ChatGPT a couple of years ago, and as companies use AI to cut back the size of their workforces. So there's definitely a trend there. There definitely is something there about employers and businesses looking to use AI for labour saving reasons, and this having potentially some impact on some parts of the labour market. And Adzuna, which is one of the database providers that collects information on the labour market, they're claiming that vacancies for graduate jobs, apprenticeships, internships, and junior jobs with no degree requirement have dropped by close to a third, with these entry-level jobs now accounting for 25% of the UK job market, which is down from 28.9% in 2022. However, set against that is we're seeing a really big surge in job advertisements that include requirements for AI skills. So these have surged by 2/3 in the past 6 months and are currently over 150% higher than the long-term average. So that indicates a growing demand for AI-related skills in the jobs market, alongside some other impacts too, potentially on entry-level roles or in parts of the business or organisations where there's an opportunity for a labour saving through using some kind of AI technology. So just moving things on, Hannah, which was the...
Yeah, just go back one. And on sorry, the one forward to that. Oh no, sorry, one back, slide 48. Yeah, and just going back to Mike's previous slide as well, just to note that Cambridgeshire Chambers latest quarterly economic survey, which is currently active, includes a question this time on the impact of AI on businesses' recruitment activity. So if you'd like to contribute to that, just head to their website, and we'll obviously be eagerly looking at those results over the coming months. So here we've got some slightly positive news that job postings for digital occupations, that's the purple line in this chart, they increased over the past 6 months for the first time in 3.5 years. However, they still remain very low compared to historic levels. So there were 4,700 job postings for digital professionals, and that was the second lowest level since the earliest period of data, and was 57% below long-term average levels, while job postings for other occupations, that's the other line, the orange line, were just 0.5 percentage below their long-term average level. And this is because the downturn in job postings for digital professionals over the past 3 years has been much sharper for digital occupations than the rest of the labour market, particularly for programmers and software development professionals. And if we can head to, slide 50. So in line with this trend, we've seen demand for some digital skills reducing within job postings, particularly those relating to software engineering and development and a number of programming languages. But at the same time, we've seen demand for some other digital skills increasing. So one of these is artificial intelligence, and that's displayed on the purple line here, while the orange line is all other job postings, not including AI as a core skill. So you can see from this chart that demand for AI skills was very low prior to 2017, and it's since increased quite sharply with a spike in the 6 months to July 2022, and also a sharp increase over the past 6 months, with the number of job postings requesting AI skills being 151% higher than long-term average levels, while other job postings were 10% below average. And unsurprisingly, this is fast becoming an emerging skills gap. So at Cambridgeshire Chambers AI event in September last year, 79% of attendees believed that AI would make their business more competitive, but only 7% said that they were fully equipped with the skills to work with or implement AI in their business, and 79% expressed a need for investing in training in skills related to AI.
So on to green skills and jobs, and this is really an area of the economy, certainly an area of the labour market that appears to be growing really strongly at the moment. So recruitment to green jobs is really surging across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and it's outperforming the broader labour market. So some of the sort of key things as key points to bear in mind here. So green job postings grew by 36% over the 6 months to July 2025, and this compares to just 2% across other job postings. So quite a big difference there. And green jobs postings were also 46% higher than the 6-monthly average for the past 10 years, while other job postings were 15% below average. So, it's really kind of a big contrast really between that sort of what's going on with green recruitment, which is really surging, and some other parts of the labour market. And the most requested green skills include waste management, water treatment, environmental health and safety, ecology, electric vehicles, and renewable energy. You've probably heard us say this number of times before, but pipe fitters are projected to be the fastest growing green occupation by 2031. That's still the case. And green jobs increasingly require non-green skills, such as project management, risk analysis, and data analysis. And in the 6 months to July of this year, Anglian Water was the top recruiter of workers with green skills, followed by Mott MacDonald and the University of Cambridge. So just moving on now. Is that the chart? Yeah.
That's the
You
one.
can pick it up from here, Hannah.
Yeah. So we're continuing to see strong demand for jobs requesting specialist green skills. So that's the purple line here, while the orange line shows job postings not specifying any green skills. So over the past 6 months, there were over 2,500 job postings requesting green skills. And this was a 36% increase on the previous 6 months. And that compares to just a 2% increase across other job postings. And green job postings were 46% higher than their long-term average level, while all other job postings were 15% below average. And we've seen demand increase for most types of green skills, particularly those related to wastewater and environment, health and safety. We're down to 61. Okay, so this table shows the top recruiters of workers with green skills over the past 5 years. So across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, these have been the University of Cambridge, Anglian Water and the Environment Agency, and at local level, top green recruiters have been in Cambridge, the University of Cambridge, the British Antarctic Survey and the NHS, in East Cambridgeshire, the Environment Agency, Sanctuary Group and East Cam Street Scene, in Fenland, middle level commissioners, Princes and Copart, in Huntingdonshire, the Environment Agency, Anglian Water and LabCorp, in Peterborough, Anglian Water, Balfour Beatty and Caterpillar, and in South Cambridgeshire, the NHS, Midsummer Energy and Care Group.
So sort of into the final stages of this data presentation, and a focus on transferable skills. So transferable skills really dominate employer demand in the region's labour market, and have done over the past 5 years. The top 9 most requested skills in job adverts in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough were all what we might call transferable skills. So these are led by communication, management, customer service, and these consistently rank as the top skills across all parts of the region. Other highly requested transferable skills include things like sales and planning, leadership, research, and you also have some occupation specific transferable skills. But communication is universally dominant across all sectors and job types. Within the report, we look at kind of how these types of transferable skills fit into different buckets, but research shows that it would suggest that there are 6 essential employment skills for 2035. And these are collaboration, communication, creative thinking, information literacy, organising, planning, prioritising, problem solving, and decision making. And actually, although the research that underpins those findings was undertaken some time ago now, reflecting on some of the trends that we've been talking about, that we're seeing currently within the labour market, all of those seem very relevant, even now. So if we move on to some of the charts, I think that's right, isn't it, Hannah?
64, sorry, the one with the bar chart. That's the one. So yeah, so data on transferable skills doesn't change much from quarter to quarter, with transferable skills continuing to be the most requested skills within job postings. So over the past 5 years, 18 of the 25 most requested skills within job postings have been transferable skills. So that's those shown here in the purple bars. And the top 9 skills are all transferable skills, with communication continuing to be the most requested skill, followed by management and customer service. And if we can go on to those occupational tables. Okay, so yeah, we've got some slides here to show the top 3 transferable skills requested in all occupational groups. So this shows that communication is a top 3 skill for every occupation. Management is a top 3 skill in 16 of the 25 occupational groups, and customer service is a top 3 skill in 12 groups, so that's more than half. And if we can just move on to the next slide. So being detailed orientated is a top 3 skill in the lower skilled occupational groups, so admin and customer service roles, production and transport operatives, and elementary occupations. And then we have skills that are much more prominent in some occupations than others, such as research for science, research and technology professionals, teaching for teaching professionals, planning for business and public service professionals, coaching for sports occupations, sales for leisure, personal service and sales occupations, operations for production operatives, and appearing recently, a strong work ethic for elementary trades.
Thanks, Hannah. So that really takes us to the end of the highlights from the report. I'm going to hand over to Andrea in just a minute. But before we do that, at the end of each report and at the end of each workshop, Hannah and I like to kind of talk about what are some of the sort of the topics that we're kind of researching that kind of go beyond the regular sort of reporting of statistics. So there's always a kind of bunch of topics that we like to be looking at in a bit more detail. So these are sort of the trends that we pick up within the reports that we want to dive into in a bit more detail. So you saw AI and some of the things just then, but also as well some of the feedback we've had from stakeholders. So for example, in previous workshops, people have said, well, can we have more about that? And so we take it away and research it a little bit more and try to include it in the next report. And so the report evolves between quarters in that way. So for this report, we've sort of flagged half a dozen things that kind of uppermost in our minds, really, and that we'd like to dive into in a bit more detail, or where the data are a little bit less clear. So always we like to look at changes in recruitment activity and skills across the priority sectors for the region's economic development strategy. So as these change or evolve over time, for instance, with most recently with the local growth plan in the region, we want to make sure that our labour market understanding is up to date with those parts of the economy. We'll continue to look at the impact on future digital skills demand from recent advances in AI and other industry developments. You know, some of the huge numbers we've seen around the request for skills specific to AI. So it's clear we want to, you know, that's a big change within the labour market. We need to keep a closer eye on it. We want to keep a closer eye on the relationship between the declining shares of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough employees providing on-the-job and off-the-job training against the rising popularity of online and e-learning. So one of the issues that throws up might be, you know, are we capturing the incidence of training correctly? You know, if the model of imparting knowledge to employees is changing over time, that always creates question marks around whether we're capturing those trends correctly. So we want to focus on that, that for sure. The other thing we really like to look at is the trends in the official and recorded share of adults with higher level qualifications, some of the recent declines, especially in Fenland. I think we're a little bit suspicious of some of the numbers that we're seeing around some of the qualification data and how that applies at a population level. That isn't unusual with labour market data. There's always sort of suspect findings that we like to look into a bit more detail, and we've picked up one or two in our most recent report that we want to spend a bit more time looking at. Also synthesising lessons learned from work placement strategies for T-levels and other qualifications. So we picked that up in the most recent report. But as the new academic year gets underway, there'll be further opportunities to build in lessons that the FE providers are picking up around T-levels. We're working with them to incorporate those within the report. And further understanding drivers of economic inactivity and accounting for the impact of new policies and programmes across health, youth employment and the pathways to work agenda. So that covers some of the activity within the local Get Britain working plan purview, if you like. And on that, I'm going to segue to Andrea's slide. So Andrea, over to you to pick up this one.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Andrea Wood. I'm the Assistant Director for Skills and Employment at Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. So as Mike mentioned at the beginning, this is the first sort of webinar where we're really starting to demonstrate a closer collaboration between the Combined Authority and also with the Chamber in terms of looking not only at the Local Skills Improvement Plan, but looking at the Get Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Working Plan, which is the local Get Britain Working Plan that we've been tasked to do. We're in the stages of development with the plan at the moment, and we're intending to publish the plan at the end of November. And we're using the very detailed analysis that Mike and Hannah have gone through this morning to really set out the stall in terms of what are the key challenges in our place and what do we need to do to really start to address some of these. The key thing with the local Get Britain Working Plan is that there is no additional funding that comes with it. So it's very much about looking at how we start to knit together existing activities across our place to really develop the systems approach to tackling some of these key challenges. And you'll see there from the slide that the Get Britain Working Plan will be a co-owned document alongside the integrated care system due to the significant impact that ill health has on economic inactivity and the demand that we need and the support that we need from the health services, the NHS, primary secondary care services involved in a lot of the policy that we develop around supporting people into work, but also in conjunction with the Department for Work and Pensions and Job Centre Plus. So we're working very closely as a triad of organisations with the Chamber to develop the plan as we move forward. So what I wanted to share with you this morning is just a kind of brief introduction to the current draft priorities and activities that start to address some of the key challenges that we've heard about this morning. And in particular, around tackling health-related economic inactivity, that is a key priority for us, and that we will try and tackle that issue through the scale-up of existing WorkWell services, which many of you may be familiar with, but there is a raft of existing employment support programmes across the region, but also through the implementation of a new programme of work, which is called Connect to Work. And over the next 5 years, Connect to Work aims to support over 4,000 adults who are either currently economically inactive due to health conditions or disabilities, or at risk of becoming economically inactive. And that is a programme that will be delivered in conjunction with employers, where we will be supporting employers to not only offer work opportunities, but also to support employers who've got employees that might need additional adjustments or to receive additional advice and guidance to support them to remain in work. The second priority in our plan is really owned by Job Centre Plus locally, but working collaboratively across the piece. And that's for Job Centre Plus to have a real focus on supporting progression and good work through aligned employment support with skills and careers advice. So many of you may have noticed in the Get Britain Working plan, the government's intention to actually merge job centres with the National Careers Service. So that is something that will be happening that we'll be helping to facilitate and see through at a local level. The third key priority there is around tackling the number of young people NEET. And as Mike and Hannah have shared this morning, that is a very alarming statistic that we're concerned about. And we're really fortunate in this region to be one of 8 national trailblazer areas for the youth guarantee. So we are planning at the moment what year 2 will look like of that guarantee, and probably what year 3 will look like, and what goes beyond that. So very much our focus on preventing young people from becoming NEET, but also making sure that they have support in place when they need that support to get them back into work or to move them into further education. The fourth one there leans onto the local skills improvement plan, and it's around tackling the labour and skills shortages. And at our kind of fingertips is a devolved adult skills budget, which again makes having a strategic authority in the region a real bonus, where we can really use our freedoms and flexibilities around that funding to make sure that it is really aligned to local skills needs and labour shortages. So we will be looking to continue to commission that Adult Skills Fund, skills boot camps and sector-based work programmes with a keen focus on the challenges that we see before us in terms of what the data is telling us, as well as the anecdotal feedback that we get from employers locally. And the next iteration of the local skills improvement plan, that will be published in March of next year. We're just starting to receive the guidance from government in terms of what needs to be achieved in terms of what the second LSIP looks like, and we'll be reporting that to you all through these forums. The fifth one is around the poor quality work and insecure work. As Mike mentioned, we are concerned about some of the lack of career opportunities for specific groups across the region, and we want to work with employers to increase the number of disability confident employers in collaboration with Job Centre Plus, but also through the development and implementation of a good work charter that helps to make sure that employers have got the support they need to offer better quality work opportunities across the region. The sixth one there is around supporting apprenticeship growth, really referencing back to one of the key figures that we're seeing in terms of the lower levels of participation of young people, and recognising that there is a 3.5% drop in the number of young people participating in apprenticeships. And we really want to make sure that we increase apprenticeship take-up, and we will do that through training grants, skills brokerage services, the levy share administration that we do with other big organisations, and also through working with industry and sector bodies and employers, obviously, to really look at how we can focus on apprenticeship growth across the region. And then the seventh one there is around some of the skills infrastructure challenges and the FE cold spots, as has been referenced this morning. And we've known for a long time now that obviously in East Cambridgeshire, South Cambridgeshire, and in particular St Neots, there has been cold spots in terms of young people not being able to adequately access FE provision. And the Combined Authority took action in the last 6 months to issue up to £4.5 million in capital grant funding to providers to increase the access to FE provision specifically in those places. So at this time, it's really too early to see the benefits of that, but we're working closely with providers to make sure that residents in those areas have an increased access, a local access, where hub sites are being developed specifically in Ely and Soham and St Neots to offer a range of FE provision focused on the skills needs and labour shortages in those areas. And that includes things like construction, green skills, health and social care, basic skills in English and maths, digital skills, and also employability provision. So the plan starts to articulate what are we doing about some of these challenges, which is really key. And this, combined with a very robust second local skills improvement plan, and thirdly joined by a strong local growth plan, which the combined authority plans to publish at the end of September. The three documents will be talking to each other, and we will be working across the system with our partners and stakeholders to deliver the key priorities and objectives that we begin to list out. So, bit of a whistle-stop tour on where we're at the moment. We will be doing more socialisation around this and communicating more broadly about it, but hopefully that's given everybody a good idea of some of the key priorities and how we plan to address them. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Andrea. I think at this point we have to hand back to Connor as Master of Ceremonies for the Q&A, which we've got time for. We wanted to take the Q&A at the end of the session so that we could, kind of talk to labour market issues in the round, really, rather than stop at the different points. But Connor, it's over to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Happy to take any questions from anyone in the room. You can either raise your hand if you want to ask it over voice, or feel free to put anything in the chat. But to kick off, I think there was a question towards the beginning from Katie around kind of ONS data, Mike. So we know there's a growing and well-publicised issue with the reliability of ONS data, particularly around NEET and economic activity. This was highlighted in a Financial Times article just last week. What risk does it place on our plans to continue to use this when we know it's so flawed? Is it prudent to find an alternative source?
So shall I make just a couple of quick points, and then Hannah, if you want to come in at this point. So the first is, you're right, it is a well-publicised issue, and it's a well-publicised issue partly because the level of economic inactivity within the economy as a whole is one of the key metrics for setting interest rates. So it's a massive, it's a proxy for how much spare capacity there is in the economy, and therefore how much price pressure. So the Bank of England specifically has been a bit of a campaigner for more investment into that body of statistics. So it has kind of broken through into the media picking it up as a topic. So yes, we're well aware of it. Within the report itself, we do devote some sections of it to this issue specifically, and sort of very kind of at a very high level, it means we need to take in as many metrics as we can for the labour market. Don't rely on any specific one, but try to look at it in the round and build up a picture from all of the different things that we have, rather than rely totally on the LFS stuff. But Hannah, if you want to come in briefly.
Yeah, just to reiterate Mike's point that we do qualify the data within the report. We do add a section just to highlight some of the issues around the ONS data, and also that just to reassure you that we don't rely on any single data source within our report. So in terms of the demand side of the labour market, we're looking at job postings data to get an indication of how much demand there is in the economy. And on the supply side, we include things like benefits data, so how many people are on working age benefits and how many people are claiming unemployment related benefits. So and assessing whether that tees up the ONS statistics, which generally seem to be all kind of moving in the same direction. So we do qualify them, and we also do include a range of data sources to try and make an assessment of the way the labour market is heading.
Brilliant, thank you. We have a question from Steve. Does job posting data break down into job levels? I'm especially interested in postings that might indicate availability of entry-level jobs and apprenticeships.
One for you, Hannah, I think.
Yeah, we've got a chart on this, I think, in the presentation on, I think it's in the digital section, on the numbers of job postings for internships and apprenticeships. Can't remember what slide that would be.
So yes, within the, I might have to just quickly go back here. So here we go.
So the one before that, I think.
There we go.
So yeah, the job postings data does provide some data on the number of job postings that are advertised for internships and apprenticeships, and also graduate job postings as well. So I mean, it's quite hard to say at the moment what the cause. I mean, in apprenticeships and internships, job postings are dropping for both. But job postings have dropped over the last few years across the board, really. So it's quite hard to tell what the cause of this drop is, but it's safe to say that the number of internships and apprenticeships has fallen more sharply than across the rest of the labour market. So it's certainly the case that AI could be having an impact on those, but yeah, that's why we've included more another question within this quarter's quarterly economic survey to get more information on the impact of AI and recruitment for entry-level jobs, to try and find out what some of these causes might be.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? I'll give it a couple of minutes if people want to put some stuff in the chat. That gives me a segue to do a quick sell whilst I'm here. I would just implore everyone who's here to join us on the 26th of September, where we'll be holding the Skills Summit at ARU Peterborough. We have a couple of panels going on and some keynotes, lots of really interesting stuff. And I feel like if you're already in the room here, you probably already have a vested interest in the skills and employment space. So if you haven't already registered, and I've seen some names in the chat that are very much already registered to attend, but if you're not and you wish to join us, please do so. You'd be most welcome. We haven't got any more questions, but if you do think of anything post-session and you just want to maybe ask a few questions around the data or some of the stuff in the report or the slide deck, I'm sure Mike and Hannah would be happy to answer. And if you've got any questions related to the CPCA and any of the programs they've got running at the moment, and there's lots of amazing stuff going on, please reach out to Andrea and the team. And if you don't have a way to do that, please reach out to us and we will happily make that connection. Brilliant. Well, I'm going to close the session now. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you to Mike, Hannah, and Andrea for joining us and sharing all of the useful information. And there will be another one of these in a quarter's time. I don't have the date to hand, but you will all be invited to join us as soon as that is put out with the post-event information.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.